so we're already having difficulties. Journey of an entrepreneur, Esther Tanez, with emotional intelligence, self-awareness, relationship management on social skills, all of that. Our expert, Jeanette Iglesias, my dear friend, founder of JI Consultings, is going to talk about today how does this impact in your leadership, in your sales, in your family. Emotional intelligence has become revolutionary in the last, what?
I want to say 30 years.
30 years. And I have to say, I'm so excited. I was chatting with Jeanette for a little bit here, and she shared so many information about emotional intelligence. So today we're going to go into it. I hope that this is of good information for you. I know this is great information for you. I hope that you take advantage of this time. Again, we have Jeanette Iglesias. Tell me, Jeanette, a little bit about you.
So I spent nearly 20 years in corporate America, and I had the great fortune of leading a lot of strong teams and helping them to succeed. And I moved from my corporate world to a more of an entrepreneurial role, and I launched my own business, JI Coaching and Consulting. And since I launched it, I had to do kind of this introspective view into what went right, what went wrong, what could I have done better as a leader, how could I positively influence success now that I'm my own entrepreneur, and what does that mean, right? And in the process, I learned a tremendous amount about myself and what I needed to do to succeed, but also a lot of the things that I did wrong in my corporate world. And how I could do those things better, how I could lead better, and how I can empower other leaders to lead in a very different way, to kind of shelter themselves from a lot of those pitfalls that I had to experience.
Is that what got you to emotional intelligence?
That is what got me to emotional intelligence. In my, when I was in that corporate space, I was a marketing operations executive, and one day a gentleman that I highly respected came to me and stopped me in the hall, and he said, Jeanette, you know what? You're really good at what you do. You're very effective, you're very knowledgeable in what you do. And he said, one of the things that you don't do is read the room, embrace the people that are around you, and kind of make connections and build relationships and stronger support. And so that happened to be one of the turning points for me, because I had to examine what was going on. Why was I shutting down conversations as opposed to kind of embracing and building them in a larger way? And yeah, I was getting things done. I was technically competent. I was tactically competent. But there was a little something missing that if I had learned to tweak that, I would have made such a much more positive impact in my world. And so launching my own business, kind of understanding what that meant to me back then and how that could play a role in my new business world, that all revolutionized my thinking and helped me to think about things in a very different way, and to be able to empower leaders to do the very same things, to grow from kind of that space and be in a different level. And what is that secret sauce? What is the secret sauce to success?
Wow.
I think I found it.
That's fantastic. So I don't know about you, but I'm getting very excited because I think that this is something that many of us I want to say the word, have a little bit of a struggle or challenge or an opportunity to grow. And so I personally have been told that, Esther, read the room. I guess I'm not that good at it. Or if someone said, wow, your delivery is just too strong. And I think I'm good in a friendly environment, but when I have to say something that really is strong for me, I have a hard time softening that. And I just say it.
Right.
And so
a lot of people face that, by the way.
So I don't know, maybe this is a time that you might want to do what Jeanette did. She went inside and checked herself, and what was those pieces that are going to help her be more successful. She was successful, but what could get her into the next level? So if you are working for corporate, or if you're in leadership, if you're a teacher, if you're, even a spouse, or anyone that is in a position of influence, this is going to be great information. I can't wait to get in it. Get a notebook, get your iPad, start writing some of the key information. And I want to say hello to everybody, but this is such great information that I'm not going to stop as often. So, Jeanette, start with emotional intelligence. Tell me a little bit of, how does that look like? What does that mean?
So, a lot of folks think, oh my God, I totally know all about myself. I'm totally self-aware, right? And back in my days within the corporate world, I thought I was totally self-aware. I knew what was going on, right? But guess what? I didn't. Because what happens, and the elements of emotional intelligence really revolve around these 4 concepts, which are self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, and that's social management, right? Which is all those other competencies like empathy and cultural awareness and things of that nature. And these are huge umbrellas. They really, they have subcategories underneath each one of them. Where this all starts, and the basis of emotional intelligence really starts with self-awareness. Now, a lot of folks say to me, oh, I know myself. Esther, do you know yourself?
I think so, but maybe not.
So a lot of folks say to me, I know myself. What do you mean? I'm very self-aware. Well, knowing yourself and saying, oh yeah, I'm with myself all the time is one thing. But actually examining the emotions that you're feeling, understanding how those emotions are coming out, how they're being perceived by others, how they're influencing the room, how they're influencing your success is really the heart of everything and the base of leadership, right? Because what happens is people see you as a leader and they follow you only when they trust you, only when they believe in you, only when they're able to see that you walk the walk. Not only do you talk the talk, but you walk the walk, right? And so having that self-awareness and saying to yourself, you know what? I'm angry at the same time I'm sad. I'm happy at the same time I'm a little bit nervous about what is going on, and understanding where the root of those feelings really are coming from and how they're impacting the way that you come across to others, the way that you read the room, the way that you're succeeding. That is all really, really, really the essence of what self-awareness really is. And I think that's the level that people don't see, right? They start with, oh, I know myself. And then they stop there. I know myself. But do you really know yourself? Do you really know the feelings that you're feeling? Do you really know how they're impacting what's going on in the room? Do you really know how they're impacting your ability to move yourself forward and your business forward, right? How am I impacting my staff? How is that coming across? If you really don't know that, then it's time to slow it down a bit and really get to the root of what that is.
You know, I have to say that it's so true. I'm going to talk about myself because I don't want to use anyone else as an example. I don't want to hurt anybody. But, you know, we all have experiences that mold our opinions and the way we view things, right? But the other person has also experiences that molds their way and how they perceive things. And sometimes you're having a conversation and it's just doing this, right? It's almost like no one understands each other. And it's because everyone has their own way of interpreting. But are you picking that up? It sounds like emotional intelligence will be able to sense that there is a lack, that it's not connecting. Yeah. And is able to maybe rearrange their words so they can deliver that message that needs to be, especially in leadership, right? Or in sales. Imagine in sales and you can't convince your client. Or you can't pick up that the client is uncomfortable
The
with
little
you.
cues. There's little cues. There's always little cues. And being able to be vigilant to the room, being able to connect at that deeper level, being able to listen. Because I think this is one of the things that, you know, we're so stuck, to your point, on our perspective.
Our perspective, yeah.
And how our perspective and what we want and how we drive to what we want. But what we're not seeing is the opposing force in front of us might have a different view. They might have a different want. And if you're not listening, if you're not connecting with what's going on in the room, the chances are what's going to happen is there's going to be a huge miss, right? And every time you miss, that's a lost opportunity. That's a lost sale. That is a lost chance for you to grow your business. That's a lost chance for you to
get a promotion,
engage your staff.
Yeah.
Lead, have greater productivity. So, you know, I think at the end of it, if you think about what is my goal, what is the other person's goal? How do I listen to what the other person's goal is? And how do I stop and try to connect? That's huge. That's really huge.
Yeah. You know, sensitivity, sometimes I don't have it too. I'm confessing to the whole world. But, you know, like sometimes I'm so determined, you know, I'm so goal oriented and the vision is, I can almost taste it, that's going to happen. And then I'm rushing through and maybe the person next to me hasn't seen the whole picture and I'm not picking that up. And it becomes a challenge. Well, why are you being so reluctant? You know, you get into that battle. And the reality is they just need maybe a clearer picture, a better, another way of communicating. And would that be an example of emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
Would that be, you know, that awareness, hey, maybe that person needs it in a different way?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people want to be heard. Right. So
yeah.
the very base of it is people want to be heard, right? And when you come in with your views and you come in at like a bull in a china shop and you're like, this is it, like this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, we're going to get it done, this is it. A lot of folks say to themselves, you know what? I don't necessarily want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to kind of impact it the way that she does. Yeah, we have a common goal. We might have a common goal, but not necessarily with her vision.
Right.
And so what they often do is if they're not heard, they shut down. And so when they shut down, there's often a moment at which there's a false promise. Or they might give you that, yeah, okay. And they won't deliver on what is expected. And so in a lot of cases, what has happened is the approach was so strong and it was so it was more of an assault on the person. And that's not how it was intended, but it can come across that way. And so when there's an assault on a person, what happens is essentially they're like, okay, we'll do that. Yeah. But what ends up happening is things take longer to get done. They slow down. They often won't tell you exactly how they feel in that moment. They often tell you, okay, yeah, you know, let's circle back.
Let's circle back.
Let's circle back.
I don't like that comment.
We'll circle back. And then once you've had some time to digest it, and I've had some time to digest it, we'll regroup. And what happens is you regroup and have the exact same conversation over and over again.
And never changed it. So, Jeanette, how about giving our audience a little bit of maybe some questions or some not red flags, but some key, how to pick that up, how to notice that about themselves. If they're sometimes, would it be okay to say that if you're too soft, that also you have to read the other person's?
Absolutely. If you're too soft, what can happen is
The other-
the other person can come in, if they're a strong person, and just kind of roll all over you.
A little bit, yeah.
So they're a strong person, so they come in, they're really strong. You're a little bit more introspective and more reserved in your approach. And the other person will come right in and jam everything into you. Mm-hmm. And then there's this feeling that may take over you at times. And the feeling is, oh my God, I can't believe what just happened to me. And it's almost like a paralyzing effect. And you feel like they've run all over me. I can't say no. What do I do? And then you're stuck.
Yeah, and I'm not being heard.
I'm not being heard. I'm not being valued. That's the underlying emotion. And so even if you do promise to execute against whatever that is, you're going to do it with this underlying energy of this other person might not have respected me. Yeah. The other person may not have understood my needs. And that underlying energy to the whole thing, that underlying emotion that sits behind all of that stuff, actually doesn't allow you to move forward the way you want to move forward.
So let me ask you, so just like the person who has the strong energy and the person that doesn't have the strong energy, they both have to learn how to read their audience, right?
Absolutely.
And deliver in a different way. But the person's so shy, they don't know how to step it up. What would be some tools? What would you suggest?
You don't always have to be strong. You can start by asking a question.
Good one.
So if you start by asking a question and someone's bulldozing you, and you say, well, do you mind if I ask a little bit about what's going on or your approach? And then you stop it in that moment. You can slow down a conversation.
Yes, that works.
They've
done it to me. It's for real. And then it makes me think.
Yeah.
It makes me think because I have all this. I've already done all this analysis and all the studies, and I've done all the, and then I'm ready to deliver. And if a person stops me and asks me a question, because I'm a very forward, authoritative person, so yes, it works. So great advice. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get to having an open dialogue, it takes you a totally different way.
And you gain the respect.
You do. And not only that, it releases some of that underlying negative energy. Because instead of feeling like a victim to the circumstance, you're now feeling empowered and able to move the situation and move the conversation forward. It's just as simple as asking a question. Now, when someone is coming at you and they're coming at you so hard, sometimes what happens is you get emotionally hijacked. And it's tough for you to answer a question, right? Your amygdala kicks in, your kind of fight or flight mechanisms kick in. And so when they do, you're sitting there saying to yourself, how do I get out of here? How fast do I get out of here?
You get out.
How do I run? How do I need to respond immediately and retreat. And so how do you stop that? Well, the same way that you can outwardly ask a question to someone else, you could inwardly ask a question to yourself, right? And when that trigger kicks in and when you're seeing that you're emotionally hijacked, if you stop yourself in that moment and say, okay, so what do I really want to get out of this? You're able to kind of get that logical brain working and kind of let that reptilian brain calm down for a little while. And when your logical brain takes over, it's able to kind of supersede the emotion and the emotional hijack that's going on. And the logical brain then starts saying, okay, how do I solve for this question? Or how do I solve for this problem? And that in and of itself starts to slow you down so that you can deal with what's in front of you instead of fleeing. Right?
Such a great advice for those that are, we have different personalities and having these different personalities, we each of us approach that same circumstance differently, but that awareness of emotional intelligence to keep yourself on check, which I find it, I love questions. It makes me feel like you're paying attention to me, but it also slows me down a lot. But it's also making me think, of all of us that are in that space of authority, and we're very outgoing type A personalities. And I know there's many of you out there. Finding yourself really asking yourself that question: how do I deliver this message in a more effective way, in a very compassionate,
right, empathetic way? Yeah, empathy. Absolutely.
I know that not all of us have strong empathy, but we have to work on it. Work on it.
And work on it.
Work on it. And what empathy is, feeling for the other person, understanding what the other person, which is basically a lot of the emotional intelligence, right? Just understanding the room, reading the room, understanding each dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to, first, I know myself. I start with my personal self-awareness, right? And then I figure, how do I manage myself? And it could be as easy as asking a question and building that out. But then what do I know about the room? What do I know about the culture here? What do I know about the organization? And what do I know about this situation? And how do I want to influence the success here? I know that I came into this room with a specific goal. And so how do I listen to what is going on? How do I read the people in the room and what they're telling me and what they're not telling me? And how do I personally pivot in that moment so that I address the goal?
So self-awareness is one of the areas that we've been talking about with emotional intelligence, and how to keep yourself on check, even though you've been living with yourself how many years, but paying attention to those deliveries, right? How do you communicate? How do you handle confrontation? How do you handle a strong leader? How you handle someone that's softer, gentler, and being an effective leader. Now, there are other areas. What would be the other areas? The social aspect.
So you touched upon it earlier. The social aspect really revolves around the empathy and kind of being empathetic to your surroundings. There's also that cultural awareness of the other individual. And so, one of the things that's really important is that we all, no matter who you are, we all come with our perception and a lot of unconscious biases. And so we have a bias for one thing or another. And in that social pillar, there is that understanding of kind of social relations and interactions and growing in empathy. And what would it mean to grow in empathy, right? What does it mean to grow beyond what is going on in front of me or inside my head or my own desire? And how do I embrace what the other person might be feeling at this moment? And sometimes, what we don't see is the person that's presenting in front of you might be presenting in front of you because of some circumstance, right? You set up a meeting, you had some intention, you wanted to get insurance or what have you. But the person that's presenting in front of you is more than just that, right?
Yeah.
They're coming to you with a lot of other things going on in their lives, right? So they're coming to you with kind of the kids who, were unhappy this morning and may have had some issues, the dog that ran away. They're coming to you with
an extra bill.
An extra bill. They're coming to you with this desire of cutting their costs, and they don't know how to tell you, oh my God, Esther, I need to help me, and they're coming to you from a place of all of these emotions at one time, and they're hoping that the person who's sitting in front of them has integrity, is not going to roll all over them, is going to be understanding of their vulnerability at that moment, right? And so that's being empathetic to the situation, being empathetic to the individual who is in front of us, because we're not just that person who comes in who potentially wants insurance.
Right.
We're that person who comes in and says, you know what, my bank account is low and I know that I need this insurance, and I need to figure out, how do I have a conversation with Esther and say to her, here's my need.
Here's my need. It's very interesting because last week we had a walk-in client here in Princeton, New Jersey. Can you believe it? A client just walked in.
Yay!
I was very happy. I was like, whoa. I'm so used to getting phone calls. I Googled you and I called you. But anyway, and her situation was very sensitive. She's a widow and she was having challenges financially, but needs insurance for her home. And, I love that she opened up to me, because it gave me the opportunity. Okay, let me see what I can do. Let me. I always shop for my clients, but there was a sensitive situation here. Who can be the lowest deposit? Because that's what she needed. I need the lowest deposit, and going through that process, being in her shoes for those moments of being a widow, of not having a full-time job.
Right.
She has a project only, and then I know how that is,
Right.
18 years ago when I went through my divorce, I only had $10. That's all, and I ate at my mother's home. So I know how desperate it feels when you have very little and yet you're supposed to move forward. So that social aspect, the cultural one, I'm very passionate about. I think that, understanding people from where they're coming from and understanding that someone that comes from another country, adapting to a new culture, adapting to new languages, to adapting to systems that are way different from their own home. I don't know, my heart goes out to that. It's
Right.
like, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine living in another state, let alone in another country.
Well, I think you can imagine it.
But
I don't think you want to do it.
No. The social aspect, especially for the leaders who have multi-cultures in their companies, my goodness, that's a whole different, that's a long conversation.
That's a really long conversation, but having that kind of awareness for who's the individual that's in front of me, and also, what could be their bias, what could be their situation, what could their fears be, what could their shoes look like. I mean, like if you're a size 7 and you're trying to fit in a size 9 shoe, that doesn't really work, right?
No, it doesn't work.
As pretty as they are, it's not going to work, right? So it's really about understanding who is the other person in front of you, more than just this circumstance and this situation, so that I can have a little bit of empathy for who they are, what they present, the gifts that they have, and how, if you come together, you might create something a little bit more dynamic and impactful than if you can in isolation. Because what ends up happening is we often think that we have the idea, we have the answer. And you know what? Most of the time, we do have an answer, but it just might not be the optimal answer. And if we dare to open up and to whatever is presented in front of us, boy, we might open up an entirely new set of opportunities.
Absolutely. So emotional intelligence, self-awareness, social awareness, self-management. One of the key informations that Jeanette said, ask the question. And even in the social aspect, a lot of people make assumptions. I have an office in Newark, and I lived in Newark for 10 years as a young adult. And they make all these calculations. I'm like, no, I didn't live none of that. Maybe you want to ask me. So asking questions and really getting to know your employee, your assistant, your student, your friend, your client, it's the beginning of emotional intelligence. Having that openness of, well, let me ask the questions. Let me connect. Let me be aware. Will probably get you further than making the assumptions or the biases that we have. And as much as we want to deny that we have biases,
we all do. We all have.
do.
We all do.
I mean, I've heard stuff come out of my mouth, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And I have to check myself. So yeah, these biases that people say for years and you believe them and you make them true. And then you meet someone and you're like, well, that's not true.
And a lot of times we don't question our biases, right? Because they're unconscious for us, right? We may go through life and think, here's an easy one. I have a preference for black cars. And it's an unconscious thing that I have. And when I see a beautiful, sleek black car, I love it. It doesn't mean that I don't love all the other colors.
But that's
it means
preference.
This is my bias. I have a bias towards black cars, right? That's something that I'm aware of. A lot of other small things I might not necessarily be aware of.
Yeah.
I might have a bias for hanging out with people with brown hair. I might have a bias for people in suits. I might have a bias for police officers. We don't know how these all come about. There's so many
that's in
every day we have a lot of them that just keep triggering and triggering. And the only way to slow it down is really to stop and ask ourselves the questions. Now, I'll give you this little tip, right? And here's the important thing. I think that because we don't often know what we're going through internally and we don't examine our feelings and aren't aware of our feelings, they trigger. They automatically trigger. And so here's an opportunity for you to slow down and stop and understand what's really going on with you. So if you wake up and you look at yourself and you say, you know what is going on with me? What is in this moment? Am I hungry? Am I tired? What do I lack? What do I need to take care of? Are there any bills? Are there any pressing situations that are really weighing on my mind? Because if you're able to kind of compartmentalize those and understand them when they're happening in that moment, then you're able to say to yourself, okay, so I know this is triggering me and impacting me in some way, shape, or form. I am going to deal with it at this time in this way. For now, I'm going to put it aside and I'm going to deal with what's in front of me. Okay? Making that conscious effort to understand the underlying emotion and how it can impact this meeting, this situation, this event, this moment, that's finesse right there, right? That allows you to be self-aware, to manage it in a way that makes sense, and then to build the relationship with the person or situation that is in front of you. And if you're able to do that, you move yourself forward in a very different way, as opposed to having it being underlying energy that somehow you're barking at, the dog barks and you bark back, and the kid barks and you bark back. Everyone's barking and everyone's angry because you're not fully aware of the situation. So if you're aware of the situation, you're aware of your needs, you're aware of how you're going to handle it and how you're going to deal with it, it allows you to manage things in a very, very different way, in a very positive way. And sometimes you have more than one emotion at a time, to what I said earlier. So understanding, I might be happy because I got a promotion, but sad because I'm leaving a team that I worked with for a very long time. And so understanding that there are multiple emotions there and how you deal with all of those multiple emotions together allows you to effectively manage the situation.
This was great information, Jeanette. Thank you so much. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness, social awareness, all of these pieces that every leader needs when leading, whether it's your home or you're a teacher or you're a business owner or you're a manager, taking a self-check, being aware of yourself, being careful to not bring that to the table, asking great questions, getting the facts, slowing it down for the type A's. This is fantastic information. I hope this was useful. Hit like if you like, hit share. My name is Esther Tanez with The Journey of an Entrepreneur. This is being sponsored by ESTIR Inc. Insurance Agency, your independent agent who can work with you. Jeanette, thank you so much. You have last few words or anything, any tips?
I think the last thing that I would say is, first off, thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having me here, because I think that's very important. And for all you guys, if you need help, if you need additional support, there are many, many coaches, there are many, many resources out there. Seek and you shall find. And it's an opportunity for you to do things a little bit differently, lead a little bit differently, and grow a little bit differently. And I'll end it with this. Maya Angelou had this amazing saying, and really it spoke to people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So
Great way to end.
with that, I say thank you.
Fantastic. So, I hope you take advantage of this information. It is crucial. Jeanette Iglesias is the owner of JI Consultants. We will put her website up so that you can get in touch with her. I know that many leaders are in need of being self-checked. Have a higher level, not just your IQ, but EQ, emotional intelligence. Have a fantastic day.